Hi again. My name is Rebel, and I'm the Rebel Reseller. And today I'm not going to be the one on the screen. Robert has agreed to put together a video about taxes. You know, how to find your tax information on each of the platforms if you didn't get a 1099. And then some of the things that we do as far as expenses and stuff for tax purposes. But I'm going to get to move over here, and he gets to be the center of attention.
I promise this will be the most boring video we ever do.
And I'll be over here being the one that listens for all the misspeaks.
There probably won't be any since I'll be doing
the editing.
The talking.
So
there won't be any.
I'm just going to stand over here.
You know how I get? I just redo myself a lot when I have to talk. So, y'all, I got notes here because I got a lot of notes. I have an 8-page note thing. Don't let that frighten you. It's not that bad. Some of them are just kind of strung out. So before we get started, what you have to know is that we are not CPAs. We are not tax professionals or any sort of certified anything. Certifiable maybe, but not certified anythings. All right. What I'm going to tell you is what we've learned. This is what we've learned in working with CPAs when we've worked with, like when Rebel worked with them in the past before we met. The years in here that we went to a CPA to get our taxes done. How many times have we done that?
We've done it 3 times, three or four
something
times,
like that,
and it ended up not being positive.
Right, and the one guy was good until he looked like he was in outer space the last year we went, and we decided we're not using him for those taxes. And then another guy did it a year, but he was very expensive.
Very.
Like nearly $1,000 if I remember right. Mm-hmm. And there's no point in our taxes being that expensive because the information we take them is pretty much what they have to key in. Now, they have their knowledge that they can help us with understanding the tax rules and the regulations and things that will get us into trouble and the things that we can do that actually won't get us in trouble, that will save us money on our taxes. So it's a good idea to go visit with one of those people every now and then anyway. So just remember, we're not certified. If you get audited after listening to this video, that you got your advice from some random guy on the internet. So the tax guys aren't going to let that account for anything in your defense.
Yep.
And honestly, everybody's tax situation is different. I'm sure across this country you could find 2 people that have fairly identical, but you might be like us, but you still got kids, or maybe your grandkids are living with you, or you've got disability income, or you've got some sort of retirement income. It just, you have a schedule, you have an LLC, or you have an S Corp, or it's just everything can be very, very different. So go see a tax person if you don't know what you're doing. When you get started reselling, and a lot of people don't do this, get a separate bank account. Separate checking account with a debit card, and all of your business transactions go through that. It does not have to be a business account. At our credit union, in order to have a business account, you have to have an EIN and other documentation possibly in order to set up a business account. Ours is our business account, but it's just a personal checking account and savings account through our credit union that we run all of our business stuff through. And if you're going to use credit cards, get a separate credit card. It doesn't have to be a business credit card just like the debit card, but it needs to be what you use. You don't put personal stuff on it, and you don't put business stuff on your personal cards. There's ways of dealing with that in your bookkeeping, but it makes things more complicated. And if you ever get audited, the IRS will see the commingling as they're just not as happy with it as if you keep everything separate.
And it just makes things so much easier at the end of the year because you've got one bank account to look through that you can pull all your expenses and anything else from.
Absolutely. You go to Walmart, and like we do, we buy Ziploc bags and those bread bag things sometimes, and boxes and lint rollers and stuff from Walmart. And I really don't want to go through my 3 trips to Walmart for personal stuff every week because it's 5 minutes away. I go there like 3 times a week, it seems like, if not 4. And sort through, let's say 3 times a week, 150 transactions at Walmart, plus the business transactions that I would do. That would be a lot of bank transactions to dig through. You don't want to do that.
Keep them separate. And anytime you can use your debit card, use your debit card. If you go to a thrift store, use your debit card. If you go to an estate sale, use your debit card. Don't use your cash. It just helps your record keeping by always using, as often as you can, the debit card.
And if you want to be frugal, you can use cash if they're going to charge you a
Right.
fee, like 3% or whatever, or $3 or something. You can use cash for there, and we'll talk about how to deal with that later. But if they're not going to charge you a fee for using your debit card, use the debit card because it gives a better record for the IRS if you ever get audited.
Yep.
For the cash spending, put it in a book if you want. Rebel did that forever in a date book where she had
A planner.
She had names of some guys in there.
A
I was a little
planner.
stressed out, you know.
A planner.
Okay. It was a daily planner. I didn't see any guys' names in there. Some guy named G.I. Joe was in there maybe, but not actually. She didn't even record it at that level, y'all. She basically put, you know, if she was at a yard sale on Saturday the 5th, she wrote $3, $2.50, 50 cents, $9, $28. It was that simple. That drove me crazy the first time we did it, and I switched over to using Google Sheets on her phone. There's a spot on her phone with a link to a Google Sheet doc, and I create a new one every year, and we have a column for the date and we have a column for the amount. And then at the end of the month or the year, I can go in and add up real easy with a formula and not have to key all that in and make a mistake typing something in. So much easier and faster. And for the two, you can do this by yourself, but for us, I get to do all the driving. We hop in the truck after a yard sale and we start to take off, and I'm figuring out where we're going next, and she's on her phone, $3.45 or whatever we spent there. She's entering that spreadsheet. It's done. We don't have to think about it again. It's recorded, and you don't even have to hit the save button in Google Sheets. It saves automatically. You're done.
But whatever you do, be consistent with what you're doing. You know, if you're going to use a book, if you're going to use a spreadsheet, if you're going to use a receipt book, whatever you do, be consistent.
Yes. And you can switch. You can switch from one to the other if it's going to work better for you. But just consistently write that stuff down all the time.
Yep.
Be consistent with recording it. Because if you're trying to go back last week or something, it's too easy to forget. And if you're not consistent with writing it down and you get audited, that's where the IRS is going to hit you with a hammer and probably not allow those cash expenses. They understand. You know, if the auditor guy came out and sat down and said, "Hey, what are you doing here with all this cash?" We go to yard sales and buy stuff and resell it. Oh, my cousin does that. It's not going to be that complicated. Just be consistent with it. And on that note, keep good records. You can get your income and expense information on the platforms, seller fees and things like that from the platforms, but your off-platform stuff, the sandwich bags and the lint rollers and the other office supplies and mileage, you're going to have to track that separately. So keep good records. And if you do it throughout the year, then it's going to be easier than trying to do it all at once on April 12th or something like that. We asked in a couple videos back if anybody had questions to drop them in the comments. We had a few. A couple of them were about quarterly taxes. Do you have to make quarterly tax payments if you're reselling? The answer is maybe. The normal rule of thumb, when you file your taxes that are due on April 15th, if you're going to owe more than $1,000, then you have to send in quarterly tax payments, or otherwise you're going to be charged a penalty by the IRS. There are forms for sending it in. Rebel does this every I would say it's every quarter, but it's not. It's kind of weird. It's in April, and then it's in June, and then it's in September, and then in January. So it's not every 3 months. It's kind of an oddball schedule, and I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just don't know what it is.
And as far as that form, once you start filing quarterly taxes, the IRS sends me an envelope every year, and it has an envelope for me to mail my stuff back in. It's got a little coupon, and it just, first, quarter by each of the due dates, and all I do is write a check and stick them in those envelopes and send it back to the IRS. There are ways to set up paying your quarterly taxes online. We just never have gotten around to it.
No, yeah, you can definitely pay online. We just send a check because I think you have to have a PIN or something, and we just send a check. How do you know how much to send in? Ideally, in a perfect world, you sit down after the first one's due in April. So after the first 3 months, you sit down and you figure out, oh, I made $40,000 the first quarter, and I got to pay taxes on that. There are calculators online for that will let you do the estimation. 15.3% is your self-employment income. That's the FICA, the Social Security, Medicare stuff. And then whatever your tax rate is going to be. For us, we don't make a ton, so our tax rate is normally 10%. So we have to know that of whatever our profit is, we have to pay 25%. And those online calculators are really good because they will account for your standard deduction if you're going to take a standard deduction. And because if you don't account for that standard deduction, then you're going to be sending in too much money. So use the calculators, let them help you out. Let's say you have a spouse that makes a couple $100,000 a year, and this is what you do for income. Well, you're going to have the 15.3% for the self-employment tax, but the other tax rate that you're going to be paying is not going to be 10% because of your spouse's income is going to be significantly higher than what ours is at the lower end of the scale.
And a lot of people, they go ahead and have their spouse who gets a W-2 or take out extra taxes, and then they don't pay the quarterly taxes. And I mean, that's one way to do it. Again, talk to an accountant, try to figure out, how much they need to be adding so that, you don't get a penalty at the end of the year for owing taxes.
Jumping into my notes, aren't you?
I'm sorry. I didn't even
all
read
right.
your notes.
That's all right. It's nice to have a sidekick in these videos. There is a semi loophole in doing this. If you send in as much taxes, quarterly tax payments this year, as you were required to pay last year, then you're covered. Let's say last year that your tax that you owed was $10,000. This year, if you send in $10,000 in quarterly payments, even if you owe $14,000 in income tax and self-employment tax at the end of the year, you're good because you sent in as much as you did last year. And that's kind of a loophole, but then you're going to be stuck with extra $4,000. Yeah, you're still going to be paying. So, and I don't know, maybe there's an amount at which that loophole doesn't take effect. I don't know. It's a semi loophole, but I wouldn't want to take advantage of it. How do we save receipts? The simple method is where I store mine is I have a gallon Ziploc bag. I write 2026 on it and I stuff all the receipts in there. Now that's after they've been stuffed in the glove box of the truck for 2 or 3 months at a time. The problem with only doing that is that those receipts can fade. So if 3 years from now you get audited, those receipts may have faded off and it's just a white piece of paper. You can take a picture with your phone and then, or we have from back when we were doing Amazon, we have a little Brother scanner. It's like a stick about this big, and you just feed the receipt through there. And it could be like 3 feet long because we were buying tons of stuff at Walmart back in the day. And I would scan these receipts, and literally the receipts would be like this long, and I would feed it through and it would scan it and I would save it in my receipts folder for 2026 or tax folder 2026. So, but a picture with your phone will be good enough for that sort of thing. Income, where do you get the amount for your income? Because I used to have an old boss, and he would talk about that when we were doing programming, the gazenas and the gazatas. So the gazenas are the income. That's what's going into your bank, and the gazatas, that's your expenses that are going out. If you sell enough, and federally, it's $20,000 and 200 transactions or more. If you meet that on the platform, which would be eBay, for instance, you're going to get a 1099. Rebel sells that much on her eBay account. I don't. I did like 6,000. She got a 1099 last year. I didn't. And it works that way on all the platforms. There are certain states, and I do not know what they are, they have a lower threshold that's like 600 or 1,000 or whatever they are. And if you meet that threshold, if we lived in a state like that was $1,000, I would be getting a 1099 because my state would require it. Not that the federal government would require it, but the state would require it. So if you live in one of those states, you're going to get one if you meet those lowered thresholds. If you don't get a 1099, do you have to claim it? That question was asked. And I have an answer for this lady. Yes. And I got a little bit deeper explanation other than yes. So let's take a trip over to some IRS documents. This is information I picked up from IRS Publication 17. If you find cash, like laying along the road, you're supposed to report that. You're walking along the road, you find cash, you got to report it.
If you find money at the Goodwill, you're supposed to record it.
If you receive a bribe, you need to include that in your other income. If you have income from illegal activities, such as money from dealing drugs, that must be included in your other income on your 1040 or on your Schedule C if you sell illegal drugs as a self-employment activity. If you steal property, you must report its fair market value in your income in the year that you steal it unless you return it to the original owner in the same year. Yes, these are literally in the IRS publication. So the AI, when I looked at this up, said that you're protected by the Fifth Amendment, that you don't have to say where you got the income, but you got to report it, otherwise you're committing tax evasion. So be careful out there, you know who, that asked this question. I got my eye on you, and so does the IRS.
If you got to pay those taxes, you got to pay all of your reselling taxes also.
However, the AI said that in your illegal activities, you could deduct reasonable and necessary expenses as part of your ongoing business concern. Income. We'll look at where to get the income if you didn't get in 1099 here in a bit. But let's talk about expenses. Obvious expenses is inventory. The things you buy, you can claim as an expense. There are two basic methods of doing that. There's the accrual method and the cash method. In the cash method, that's what we do. It's simple. A lot of small sellers use it. A lot of small businesses use it, even not even resellers. When I spend the money, if I go buy something at the bins or a yard sale today, that's when I claim the expense. If Rebel here in her store is doing the accrual method, if she goes to a yard sale and buys something today but doesn't sell it until next year, she claims the expense for that item next year when she sells it, not today when she bought it. That is a better accounting method. It allows you to more closely align your expenses with the sales that happened, but it is much more complicated for us. Anyway, when we go to the bins and we buy 2 carts full of stuff that has a couple hundred items in it and we spend $130, I don't want to take that $130 and associate a specific amount to each of those items we purchased, especially when she comes home and has 4 things and decides that they need to go on a lot together, or 6 things ended up having bad tears or damage and she threw them away. It would just make it overly complicated. So we do the cash method, and you can do that. I think I read up until like $25 million in revenue or something. So do what works best for you. Check with your accountant, your CPA person, and get their advice. But for us, the simple cash method of, if I spend the money today, that's when I claim the expense. Where that would bite us, if we decide that we're done sourcing, we're going to phase out our reselling business. If we didn't spend any money this year on inventory, and we spend several $1,000s a year on inventory, that we wouldn't have that at several $1,000 expense this year, but we would still have all the income that we're making. It would slowly dwindle down in the income because we don't have as much, but it's just not matching with our sales. So that's why some people prefer the accrual. I like simple.
Very simple.
Mileage is another big expense for us because we drive a lot. If you're a reseller and you go to the yard sales and the thrift stores in different towns and stuff, you're going to have a lot of mileage. The IRS has some rules on it. We use a tracker app. We use Everlance. Other people use MileIQ. We prefer Everlance because MileIQ, at the level we were paying at what the equivalent cost at the same level of pay in Everlance, would only tell us that we drove from Greenville to Greenville, whereas Everlance tells us we drove from this address to this address, and it gives us a nice little map. And I know the map that looks like this is me going to the post office. And it just lets us track those. And every night, Rebel and I lay down in bed every night and we play a few little games on my phone. And one of the things that I do right before that is I go to my mileage app and I swipe personal, personal, business, 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 personal. And it gets tracked every day, because in the past I wouldn't do that. And I would wait a week or two and then I'd be like, oh, where was this trip? Just do it every day and it's nice and simple. And it adds up to a lot. It's 70 cents per mile, either last year or maybe this year might be a little bit more, but it ends up being, you travel 1,000 miles in a year, you get to take a $700 deduction on your taxes, which could save you a couple $100 in taxes that you got to pay. So that mileage tracker app keeps it simple, so it's very much worth the, I think, $60 or $70 a year we pay for it.
And it's a tax write-off.
Yes. And it's a tax write-off, so we don't actually end up paying the full cost because it reduces our income. Cell phone, you can claim those, whatever business use you have. And how do you determine what your business use is? You got to figure that out. It's different for everybody. If you're a small part-time seller and you only work an hour a day on eBay, it might be 5% or 10% or something. But for those people that are doing it full time, you might have a significantly greater percent. And that's something you'll need to work out with your tax professional as to how much of those two you should be claiming. Shipping supplies over here. Behind Rebel, we have lots of boxes and bags and tape and bubble wrap, and we have our air pillow machine and all sorts of stuff. All that stuff you can use as a deduction for shipping supplies. And I'm calling them this where they go on the tax forms. You know, your CPA will put it on there, or you can, when you go through something like TurboTax, you can figure it out. Office expenses, paper, labels for our thermal printer, air pillow film. Computers are in a kind of a space of their own. Normally when you buy equipment, you have to depreciate it over its lifespan, like say 5 years or something. But if the item is, I think, less than $2,500, it is. If you have a plan in place for that's what your level for immediate depreciation is, you can expense that computer or piece of equipment all at once in the year you buy it. If it's more than that, then you have to depreciate it over its lifespan. And as resellers, most of the stuff we buy is going to be under that $2,500 threshold. We use cameras, right? We use our cameras. You know, we got 2 cameras here, a GoPro. That was a expense for us for doing YouTube. Home office expense. This one can be tricky. I used to think that it was a huge red flag that it would cause the IRS to audit you more frequently or more intently. And so we always took once we found out that there was a simplified method that you can take whatever space you're using solely and wholly for business. If you have like a spare bedroom that you only do reselling business in there, then you could claim that square footage percentage of your house as home office expense. The simplified way is you say, well, my bedroom is a 10 by 10, it's 100 square feet. I'm going to take the simplified method and do $5 a square foot and take a $500 tax deduction for that. If you want to if you have more than 300 square feet that you use, then you could do the actual expenses, and then you add up all your expenses for your house, which would be utilities, gas, water, electric, security camera, security system, mortgage expense, property taxes, repairs that are relevant to the reselling business, all that sort of stuff. And if you're using, say, 10% of your house is your reselling business, then you can claim 10% of all of that as your home office expense. And then if you do it that way, then when you sell your house, you got some tax considerations there, but that's a down the road. And if Rebel and I stay here until we keel over dead, then the kids have to work that tax problem out. It won't be ours to worry about. So I'm good with that. The max you can claim in square footage on those simplified method is 300 square feet or $1,500 a year in tax deduction for home office expense. We use a lot. Our deduction on that went from $1,500 a year to more like $4,000 a year. So you're talking $2,500, and our tax rate on $2,500 is 25%. So $600 a year in tax savings just for making that change. And the year that we started doing that was one of the years we had talked to a CPA, and they said, because I thought when you got audited, I thought they brought a microscope out and went through your life. She's like, no, they don't do that. They send you a letter with like 3 or 4 questions, and you need to substantiate why you have this deduction or why this is what your income is. And she said, you're a reseller. Take a picture of your inventory and just tell them, I'm a reseller. This is all my inventory storage space and my prep space. And they'll be like, oh, well, that makes sense. Just because our space is out of the norm for what a home office expense is. So don't be afraid to take it, because you just need to be able to substantiate that it is only used for business. More expenses, selling fees, transaction fees, store subscriptions fees. You can get those on your selling platforms. Listing fees on Etsy is not a big one, but it's something that you typically don't have on the other platforms if you have a store subscription. Shipping costs, that'll come from either the platform you're selling on, such as eBay, or if you buy your shipping through Pirate Ship, you'll have a shipping expense that you can get from there. Software and subscriptions, Microsoft Office, Nifty, my Reseller Genie, those sorts of expenses would be software things that you could claim as a reseller. One thing about the equipment is that does not cover inventory, and it does not cover land. So, and remember, it's $2,500. If it's more than that, you generally have to depreciate it, except there are some 179 bonus depreciation things that you could take, but I know nothing about that because everything we buy is under $2,500. Meals. If you're going out of town for business, I think the rule is you have to be out of town to stay overnight or long enough that you need substantial rest, and you can claim meals. So when we go to, say, Nashville to to do sourcing at the bins there, we get to claim the mileage there and back, all the mileage we're driving around there. And we get to claim meal deductions while we're there. And when you claim a meal deduction, let's say that we spend $200 in meals, I think you only get to claim half, but I think you put the $200 into the tax form and then it gets multiplied by 50% and then you get half of that. So we would get to have a $100 tax deduction for our meals. There is a GAO per diem thing that I just learned about in doing some research for this that might be more beneficial, but I need to know more about it before I can decide to use that or not. And that might be something that might be more beneficial tax-wise for someone that's out of town sourcing to look at. Entertainment. We really don't have entertainment, so yeah, we don't have that. But one thing we do here is generally every month, sometimes not every, it's been a couple months, we have a reseller meetup where we get together, we talk about reselling and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. That's a business meeting. You can claim that as a meal deduction. If you were to meet, let's say, somebody in town that might have a supply of steady inventory for you, and you took them out to lunch to work out the business deal, that would be a business expense. That sort of thing, you can expense those, but you only get it at the 50% rate. It's still better than nothing. Sales tax. Most resellers don't have to worry about this because the platforms are marketplace facilitators, so you don't have to go file sales tax with your state. We do. Years ago when we were selling on Amazon, we got a sales tax exemption so that we could go to Walmart or other places and buy things and not have to pay sales tax to reduce our cost of goods sold, which would make us more competitive in selling things. And because of that, we have to file sales tax every quarter. Some states might be monthly, some of them might be annual, but for us, we do it every quarter. And it's real simple. I go in, I mark some things. It takes me about 10 or 15 minutes, and I put 0 because we don't ever have sales off any of the platforms. So I just mark it as 0 and file it. If I don't do it, I get charged $15 for being late, which is kind of a pain, and I get angry looks from Rebel when I do that every now and then. One thing, if you do Shopify or have your own website, then sales tax is going to be a concern for you that you might have to file, especially in your home state. Other states, you need to talk to a tax professional about that. And Shopify, you have to do it there because Shopify is not a marketplace facilitator. They're basically a website host, so they don't count as a facilitator. Should you form an LLC or an S Corp when you first start up or down the road after you've been reselling for a while? And that all depends on your state and your personal tax situation. If you're not making very much money, then all they're going to do is add expense, at least at the S Corp level. The LLC can provide some, it's at the limited liability company or corporation, I forget which it is, but it can separate liability from your personal assets if you have that set up. So if you do something in your business that causes you to get sued and somebody wins that lawsuit against you, they win it against the LLC and not against Robert, and I don't lose my house over it. So the LLC can be beneficial in that regard. But here in Tennessee, if I remember correctly, years ago, I had an LLC when I was doing some software development. And I think it was $300 a year that I had to pay, that I wouldn't have to pay if I was doing it as a sole proprietor. Because if you don't do anything when you're reselling, you're a sole proprietor. If you're starting a business, you're a sole proprietor, unless you file to be an LLC or a partnership or something. But I think it's $300 a year, and I don't want to pay that $300 a year unless I need to for some reason. S Corps add another layer of complexity. When you do an LLC, they're generally called a pass-through. So you set up your LLC, the income from the LLC passes through the LLC and lands on my Schedule C on my 10-4 for my taxes, and I pay it there. So it passes from the business, passes through the business and to me. An S Corp is a little different. You still got to pay income on that, income tax on that. However, you have to do other things too. You have to pay yourself as an employee. You can't just take money from the business. You have to have a payroll set up, and you can either do it yourself and follow all the payroll and legal guidelines, or you can farm that out to somebody like Gusto or QuickBooks or somebody to do the payroll for you. But that's going to be an added headache and expense for you that you're going to have to deal with. It's something to think about when you start making $40, $50, $60, $80,000. That might be something that would save you money. Where do I get my numbers for these taxes, right? Hopefully you're selling enough that you're going to get a 1099 from the platforms. Rebel gets that on eBay, but we don't get it on the other platforms. Maybe this year, Poshmark, especially, and Etsy keep going like they're going. She's going to be getting 1099s from them. So hopefully things keep going, and maybe I'll even get one for my eBay store this year. But if you're not getting it a 1099, let's go look at where we can get this, and we'll start with eBay. One thing to remember on these platforms is that your 1099 will generally not match perfectly with the reports that you get from the platform. The 1099 is based on the settlement date, which is when the funds transferred or something like that. But the reports on the platforms are typically based on the order date. So if something is ordered on, say, December 30th, the eBay report will probably show that, hey, that's when the order happened. But your 1099, the money might not transfer until, say, this 1st or 2nd of January, which will put it into the next year. And so they might not line up perfectly. Just be consistent in where you get your numbers from these platforms. And if you get audited and they say, well, why isn't this matching? You could say, these are the reports I use. I use them every year. This is what I have. And you should be fine. Because I don't think the IRS is out to get most people, unless they think you're pulling shenanigans on them. Then they're probably going to try to get you. But if you're just consistently and honestly doing the same thing every year, then you're going to be okay.
Now, my accountant said use what's on the 1099.
Yes. You always need to use the 1099 number. I mean, a CPA might tell you differently, but I'm always going to use that as my income from eBay because I do not want that to be different from because that 1099 gets reported to the IRS. So that is absolutely the number I'm going to use for my top line revenue number. If you did not get a 1099 from eBay, there are multiple ways to get this out of here. The one that I found was really simple, and sometimes these reports on eBay, one report might vary from another, but for mine last year, the report that I'm going to look at, I looked at the transaction detail report, which is what AI had suggested, and I looked at the financial overview report, and they were exact. But I just started selling last year on eBay under my own account, and next year it might be off a little bit because of those settle dates, order dates, and just, maybe the reports were built by a different person. They used a different date. But as long as you're consistent in using the same one, you should be good. And I assume it would be okay to change to make something simpler, but just keep being consistent after you make the switch. So I go to get my numbers, I'm going to go to the financial overview, go to payments and reports. And this is, it comes up by default to the financial overview. And I'm going to pick last year. And you could do, if you're doing this monthly, you can just go in after the month end and do this every month or quarterly or however often you want to do it. I'm just going to punch in last year so we can see the whole year's worth. Don't be lazy and only do it once a year. You'll regret it. So for my income, my order proceeds, I have two types of income on eBay. I have item subtotal. That's what the buyer paid for stuff. And then I have shipping and handling income because I charge shipping. That's my income right there. And it has the gross amount right here. I would include these when I'm filing my taxes. We use TurboTax. I would include both of these as probably separate places of income, but maybe not. I don't know. I haven't done this for mine, so we'll see what I end up doing this year.
It's not separate on mine.
No, for her, it's all in the 1099. So that might make sense to just do it as one lump sum as income.
Yep.
Refunds, these are actually a negative sale. I believe there's a place in TurboTax to put refunds. And you could record them as a separate line. They're not an expense. They're a deduction to income. Then we have expenses. If I click on that block, it says that I have $1,100 in fees and $1,600 in shipping labels. If we come down here to the lower left a little bit, we can see the details of this. I have the $1,100 in fees is broken down into $585 in insertion fees. That happened right before we upgraded my store. I have ad fees, promoted listing fees of $110. There's typically a separate place in accounting programs to put advertising, and that's where that would fall. Other fees, this would be, I believe for my store, just be the store fees that I paid for the year. And then transaction fees would be the final value fees and payment processing fees. Then shipping label fees down here, we have label charges of $1,600, and then I offer free returns, so I have $38.99 in return labels. And then $2.10 in adjustments for who knows what. And then net transfers, that is what went to your bank. So these numbers, if you add up your order proceeds and subtract all your expenses, you may or may not get your net transfers because of overlapping ends of months and when the money came in and when it went out of your account. I also have this $14.73 down here in adjustments. That, and I went digging into my transaction report to figure out what that was. This was when I upgraded my store before, my previous store subscription ran out. They gave me a credit for whatever was left over on that. We did that twice last year. So I had two different transactions that summed up to a $14.73 adjustment credit. Another place to get this information would be to come down here to this transaction report, and it downloads all the transactions for the year. And then you could sum those columns up. When I did it for my store, I got the exact same numbers that were up here. One of the things that caused me a little problem with that transaction detail report when I downloaded it was it included holds as separate amounts in the item subtotal. And that happened when there was a return for some reason, and that was throwing my numbers off. But once I excluded them from the sums, then everything matched up perfectly with what I saw here on this financial overview report. Next up, we have Poshmark. I went to my sales and my sales report, and then I could do the last full year if you're going to do it for the full year, and then hit email report, or you could do here, you could enter a custom date range if you want to do it monthly or quarterly or something. Hit email report, Poshmark will email you a link, you hit the link, and then you download your transactions, and then you need to sum all your amounts in there. The sum of order price will be your gross sales. I did not have any fees in the other columns, but you might if you offer shipping discounts or have upgraded shipping label fees for some reason. Like maybe you shipped something that was oversized and you didn't account for that when you made the listing. For me, the difference between the sum of order price and the sum of your earnings was the amount that I need to enter as my Poshmark selling fees, because I didn't have any of those other columns, just the difference between those two. And if you have those other columns, you might need to do some different adding and subtracting of numbers in there to get it to come out and balance for you. For Mercari, I went to me in the upper right hand corner, seller dashboard, and then sales report. And if you scroll down, they have annual reports here you could click and download and get all your information for the entire year. If you want to do it monthly or quarterly or something, then you could come in here and enter the begin and end dates for downloading that report. One thing to be careful on with Mercari is it includes canceled reports. I had one sale on Mercari last year, but canceled. I had one thing to be careful. Look at you over there correcting me like I correct you when you say wrong stuff. I was
like, no, that didn't sound right.
It didn't sound right. This is why we need to have a sidekick, y'all. So I sold one thing on Mercari last year, and I didn't realize that when I went to pull this report. But there were two lines, and I'm like, well, why doesn't my payout and all this match or anything? It's because one of the rows in the report said canceled. So you'll need to either move those or delete them if you're going to do your sums in here, because the sums did not match what I got paid out. So the sum of the item price will be your gross sales. Other data you will need are the seller shipping fee, Mercari selling fee, payment processing fee charged to the seller, shipping adjustment fee, and penalty fee if you have any of those in there. And those will be your Mercari selling fees that you'll need to add, into your tax calculations. Now let's pop over to Etsy. I don't sell on Etsy, so I'm having to use Rebel Store for this. You want to go to Shop Manager and go down to Finances and then Monthly Statements. And you could click on a specific month. I'm going to go back a month so we get a full month's worth here. And you do this by monthly on here. There may be a way to dig out an annual report, but I haven't seen it on here. I just use this monthly one and enter the information month by month. So for sales, you're going to have total sales, but the odd thing with Etsy is they include sales tax in that total sales section. So to get your gross sales, you need to start with total sales and subtract the sales tax paid and add back any sales tax credit. So for last month, if I were going to get our total sales on here, I have to take the $16.76, subtract out the $115.51 in sales tax, and add back the 81 cents. And that will be my gross sales for the month. Then we have to subtract out the refunds, and that'll be all your sales numbers. seller services. We don't do any of the marketing. If you do any Etsy ads or anything, you'll have advertising fees here. Fees, your selling fees are going to be up here. Listing fees are going to be the $36.40. Transaction fees and credits, if you have any credits for anything, will be there. Your payment processing fees are here, and any credits you have for that. These two, I believe, would be credits for that return. And a lot of times the platforms give you a credit back when there's a return. So add those in as a reduction in expenses when you're doing your taxes. And then shipping is down here. Oh, wait, one thing, the share and save refund. If you have a number here, this is how much you got back. If Rebel were to get a special link, you can get them on Etsy to one of her items or to her store and share it with somebody, and then they clicked on that link and bought stuff, then Rebel will get 4% back as a refund and a reduction in her fees. So that's a nice thing to do if you want to go about doing it, but that will be here as a reduction in your expenses. And then shipping costs are down here. Shipping labels, $288.87. And if you have any taxes, they'll also be there. One more, y'all, down to Depop. If y'all sell on somewhere else, you're on your own. On Depop, you need to go to your selling hub, then over on the left, go to stats. And then up here on the right, this was hidden from me. Stats might be a good place to get it, but they're hiding this download sales thing. Click this download sales, and you'll be able to download a spreadsheet of your sales for Depop. I haven't had to do this one yet because I didn't have any sales on Depop last year. And I only have one sale this year, but it looks like item price, the sum of that column will be your gross sales. USPS cost is your shipping fees. I don't do free shipping, so I'm going to have 0 in there. But if you're giving free shipping on there, you're probably going to have a shipping fee in there that you had to pay. And Depop, if they charge you any fees, because I think there are no Depop seller fees, so mine was 0. Depop payments fee would be the transaction fee that you need to include for your taxes. And the boosting fee would be if you did any promoted listing kind of thing on Depop, would be another ad fee for you. So that's how you pull the numbers from the various platforms that we have. How do we collect all this data ourselves? And then what do we do with it? We use my Reseller Genie. We have it set up to pull the information automatically, and it pulls from eBay, Poshmark, Mercari, and whatnot automatically. It just regularly goes out, pulls it into my Reseller Genie, and accumulates the information. Other platforms you could pull in manually. Like I do that for Etsy. Like I said, I go in and I get the monthly totals, and then I enter them into my Reseller Genie. You can have multiple accounts per platform for my Reseller Genie. For eBay, it connects automatically behind the scenes. So it goes out and pulls my store into my Reseller Genie and Rebel store into my Reseller Genie as 2 different named accounts within itself. And that allows us to see, the income and eBay expenses for my store and to be able to see her separately, which is important for, determining the profitability of each individual store. Like I said, it will pull in Poshmark or Mercari automatically, and also whatnot. And I'm not sure how it does whatnot because we haven't done that. We don't have that set up in there. I haven't done it yet. But for Poshmark and Mercari, you have to have a tab logged into Poshmark and Mercari in order for it to pull that information. I suppose, I haven't done this yet, I could sign out of Rebel's Poshmark and Mercari stores and then sign into my Poshmark and Mercari stores, and it would go out and pull that information. Or I could probably, like I said, I haven't tried this, go sign into my Reseller Genie through Brave in a different browser and sign into my Poshmark and Mercari there, and I assume it would pull the correct information. You just have to set up the integrations in my Reseller Genie to get it to do it. We do cash inventory, but my Reseller Genie does have a process for doing accrual inventory accounting in there, but I don't know how to tell you how to do that. You'll have to read their documents, watch your videos to figure that one out on your own if you're doing the accrual method for accounting for inventory. To account for your off-platform expenses, such as mileage, if you're sourcing out of town, lodging and meals and office supplies and shipping supplies and stuff like that, you'll have to manually enter that into my Reseller Genie, sort of. If you have it going through a bank account, like I download our bank transactions for our business bank account, and I create a spreadsheet, categorize them in the spreadsheet, and then upload those to my Reseller Genie. You could upload them and then categorize them in my Reseller Genie, but I just prefer doing it in a spreadsheet and then uploading it. A free method for taking care of your accounting would be to use the Wave accounting package online. There's a free version that you could manually enter your information into, your income, your expenses. You could treat it. It is a proper double entry bookkeeping system. It works great that way. Or you could just, I suppose, I haven't tried this, just enter in your income and expenses and have it generate a profit and loss without doing all the balancing and reconciling that you're supposed to do in a proper bookkeeping system. But you should be able to use it in that simplified fashion if you want. I have a friend that I believe did that for one of her, it's not a reselling store, but it's a drink store. And I think she used it that way last year. I'm going to try to help her get set up with a proper double entry bookkeeping system this year. You could use QuickBooks. It's a more expensive online accounting platform. Similar to Wave, it's been around a lot longer, possibly has more features. But like I said, it's going to be more expensive to use that than to use the free version of Wave. And it's going to be more expensive than Reseller Genie. You could use Excel or Google Sheets. Google Sheets is free. And go manually download this information or look at the information on your different platforms. Key that into Excel or Google Sheets and do your calculations in there for your taxes. And theoretically, you could do pencil and paper if you wanted to go back to the Stone Age. I wouldn't suggest that, but there are people that still prefer doing that sort of thing because they're not proficient with technology. They would just prefer to handwrite it all down in the old manual log books, the little ledger books, and do it that way. In filing your taxes, if you don't know what you're doing, please go see a professional. Have them do the filing for you. If you feel confident, then have at it. We personally use TurboTax. I'm sure there are other options out there, but that's what we've used for years. It costs us a couple $100s a year. I don't remember the exact amount. And we always pay a little extra to get the audit protection so that if we're audited, then they will have somebody from TurboTax there to represent us with the IRS. And in my mind, you kind of always want that sort of thing. It's kind of like having a lawyer when you're going to court. They know having that audit protection from TurboTax gives me a little peace of mind that if we were to ever get audited, that we have a professional there that knows how to go through this process and to make sure that, you know, it turns out the best way for us that it possibly could. All right, y'all. Can I get to work? I can't do that yet?
No.
Or do I have to have a proper exit? All right. I hope this made sense to y'all. If you have more questions, let us know. There's a lot to doing the accounting stuff, but I think it's not as complicated as most people make it out to be. It's just a headache. It's kind of scary because we all, at least I always have had this fear that if I do this wrong, I'm going to be in prison for 20 years. Probably not. They're probably only going to put you in prison if you are intentionally defrauding the government. Or tax evasion. But if you're doing the best you can, they're going to send you a letter and they're going to say you messed it up and you owe some extra taxes and penalties and interest, but you're probably not going to go to prison. So just be honest as you can and do the best you can, and you should be okay with that. Do you have anything you want to add?
Nope. I have enjoyed being the sidekick.
Have you? Yes. I have not enjoyed not being the sidekick. All right, y'all. Get to work. Bye. And if you get audited after listening to this, that you got your advice from some couple questions we had when we were, we solicited. Is that the right word? It sounds like I'll go to jail for that. But we asked